Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and today I'm going to be taking apart my trusty old AM1 system, giving it a clean and getting it ready to pass on to its new owner. Keep watching to find out more. Okay, so a little bit of a backstory for this one. Now, this is my trusty AM1 PC. Now, this is using the old AMD 5350 CPU, which actually in this little media center has been running absolutely brilliantly. It's been in the front room. It's been in there for actually quite a few years now, and it's been doing its job greatly. A little bit of Rocket League, Chrome browsing, absolutely fine. It's just a really great workhorse media PC. It's very limited specs. It's only got 8 gigs of RAM, so it's 2 sticks of Corsair, I think it is, value RAM, 4 gig sticks, DDR 1333. So it's by no means a speed demon. It's only a 2 gigahertz 4-core CPU, and it's running on the old AMD architecture, so it's not brilliant, but with a little bit of an overclock, it's actually pretty good and plays Rocket League really well on the big screen in there, the 42-inch TV. Absolutely fine. It's a very, very enjoyable little system, and best of all, it is absolutely silent. Now if we get closer, literally absolutely nothing coming from it. Maybe a little bit of electrical noise, but that is essentially it. Now the power supply for this is a separate power brick, so it's using a Pico Psu, so it's a tiny little power supply with a separate power brick. The fan in there, the only one moving component actually in there, is a Arctic cool-in. I think it's called the AM1, which is quite an original name because it's for the AM1 chipset, but we'll be taking a look at that and giving it a good clean up. Now the reason behind this video is actually I've never taken this thing apart fully. I bought it secondhand off a friend, and they did me a good deal, so I just took it as it was, used it, and I've been using it ever since. I've done very, very little to this apart from maybe give the fan a little blowout every now and then, but I've never checked the paste, never taken the motherboard out. Got to be honest with you, I'm not even sure how it comes out. It doesn't look like it's going to be particularly easy, so we'll be going through that anyway. So the story is, if you've seen previous videos, which I'll be linking to up here, some of you may know I've got an ITX motherboard, the B450 Pro from ASRock, which I'm going to be making a new system in the InWin A1 case. So that is going to take pride of place, is going to be going in the living room, a little bit faster, a little bit nicer, it's a bit more upmarket, and that actually is going to have another couple of uses as well, which we'll come on to in later videos, so that's a top secret at the moment. So essentially this one is going to go upstairs and Angel's going to be looking after it for us. Now Angel's room is an absolute pigsty. You can't get in there. It's an awful place to be. Not a great place for a PC. So that's why I'm going to give this thing a fighting chance, give it a really, really good clean, make sure that everything is absolutely tip top, because realistically, after it goes in there, I'm never going to be able to get access to it again until the finally dies or whatever. So anyway, that is the story behind it. So we're going to get into it, clean it up, and see what it's like. So first of all, let's shut it all down and disconnect all the power to it. And just so you can see, it is actually this PC. You'll see the light go off in a minute. Actually, I really do love this PC. I don't know what you guys think about it. The form factor is so small, it's so quiet. It's just actually a joy to use. It's a shame I can't get a faster CPU and motherboard in there, otherwise I certainly would, but the limitations of the Pico Psu and also price-wise and all that kind of stuff, it does make it difficult to actually put anything else in there. But still, let's take it apart and give it a good clean. So here we are, this is the PC disconnected, so let's give you a quick tour around the side. So on the side you've got a couple of USB 2s, which gives you some idea of the age of the machine. Now actually it's brilliant because literally I just plug in a keyboard dongle. I've been using the Logitech K400, I think that is, K400 Plus, which has been absolutely brilliant. Again, you can see a review of that up here and the links will be in the description, all that kind of stuff. Plenty of ventilation on the side. On the back is our I/O. Now I just noticed actually the I/O shield is popped out a little bit there, but never mind. So I/O on this actually isn't that bad at all. You've got keyboard and mouse port, you've got VGA, DVI-D, HDMI, there is a serial port. So this sort of thing is ideal if you're going to use it in maybe like a workspace or something, and maybe connect it to some kind of till or display unit or whatever, anything like that. You've got a ton of USB ports, all USB 2.0. There's a couple of USB 3.0. You've got a, I think it's a gigabit LAN. I'm not entirely sure. It might just be 10100. It is quite old, but it's got a LAN port, and then you've got your audio jacks. So you've got your line in, your microphone, headphone or line out, and your microphone port. Up here is the power connection, so it uses like a power connection, and there's a little twist turn thing you can put on there. You can actually move that around to wherever you want. That is the beauty of these mini ITX systems. When they came out, they were really flexible and you could do a lot with them. Anyway, let's get into this thing. So literally, I think it's just these 4 screws and the lid comes off and gives you access. Now, I have changed the hard drive in this a few times and we've lost a couple of screws here and there, so most of it's held together with a bit of tape. But there's no real moving parts in there, so it isn't really a problem. Maybe it's starting to be a problem. So inside we've got this kind of sled where the hard drives are attached. You could actually have 2 drives in there if you wanted to, like a SSD and a mechanical drive, but I've chosen just to go with a single mechanical drive. Partly because there's actually only one SATA connection off this power supply. So hopefully you can get a good view of what's going on in there. So here's your main I/O at the back. This is your DC jack, which goes to the power pack. You've got the Arctic cooling cooler in there, which is a tiny little thing, but actually does really well and is pretty much completely silent. You've got some VRM coolers just there. Now there isn't actually a chipset cooler on this because despite what many people believe, this CPU isn't actually an APU, it's more of a SoC, a system on a chip. So everything to do with the motherboard essentially, the RAM controller, the IO controllers, all that kind of stuff is all actually on the little CPU or SoC. So it's not an APU, it's not an accelerated processing unit like the newer FM1 chips. Basically everything is all on that one chip. So it's very similar in fact to the kind of the Intel, I'm trying to think what chips they were. There was the little quad core chips or dual core 4-thread things which came out in little mini PCs, Acer, was it 3610s, those kinds of things. It'll come to me later, but it's essentially is a competitor to that. So again, 2 GHz, 4 cores. It's by no means a powerful setup, but it's not bad and it gets the job done. And so it plays Rocket League pretty well at 720p, so you can't really ask for more than that. So that is where I've lost the screw, so we've got a bit of tape holding it on, so I put that to one side. Again, it's just an integral SSD in there. It's only a 120 gig, but absolutely fine for Windows and a couple of games. So that'll give you a little better of a look inside. So this is our Pico Psu. So if I just unplug that, so you can see that a little bit better. I need both hands for that. So that is the Pico Psu. So it's your, I think that's a 20 pin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, so 24 pin connector, which is married straight up to a kind of daughter board with some MOSFETs and things like that. I don't really know the technology, but all I know is that is essentially the power supply. So coming off of that, you've then got a 4-pin Molex, you've got a SATA connector, and you've got your 4-pin supplementary PSU P4 connector, which goes on the top of the board. So actually we might as well leave that out for now, because we'll be trying to rewire this and make it a little bit neater. Not a lot SATA wise, so you've got 2 SATA connectors. If you're using this in a larger case, then you could put 2 drives in, like I said, or you could put 2 in there if you had the power supply, but because it's a low end power supply, I think the Pico Psu is only maybe like 100 watts or something, or maybe 120 watts maximum. Although this CPU or SoC is only, I think it's a rated TDP of like 25 watts, so it really does sip the power. Anyway, let's try and get this cooler off. I'm pretty sure the cooler actually mounts on the bottom of the motherboard, so we'll probably have to take the motherboard out. So we'll go ahead and do that next, I think. So there shouldn't be too many screws. I think it's only 4 screws to take this thing out. Looks like it's just the 4. There's one hidden right down there. It's going to be interesting to see actually how dirty this is on the bottom and how badly the paste has gone on there. Now, like I said before, the guy I got this off years ago, well, a couple of years ago, I would imagine he's probably used Arctic MX4 paste, so it should actually still be in pretty good condition. So we'll just disconnect the I/O and move some of these cables out of the way. So we've got our USB header there. Now I suppose actually I could probably upgrade the header, put something else on there, maybe not. That's on there pretty tightly. So there we go, that is essentially it. Now, yeah, I was right, that is how the cooler actually attaches to the motherboard, so just those two screws there. Let's take a quick look inside here. And as you can see, there's not really a lot going on in there. There's lots of ventilation actually to let air up through and out the sides and all that kind of stuff. So there is actually a lot of airflow in here, which is kind of nice, even though it really doesn't need it. The fan on this only spins at a maximum, I think, of 1,000 RPM or thereabouts, and it normally idles when Windows is running about 600 RPM or so, which I've actually increased up from its standard setting. But there you go, you can see the board in a little bit more detail. It's absolutely tiny. Amazing what you can actually get on such a small board. And as you see, there's the RAM, the Corsair Value Select, 2 sticks of that. So actually, while we've got this out, we might as well give that a quick clean with the air duster. Now you'll probably notice that I'm not taking any anti-static precautions. I can't be bothered, is the honest answer. I should do it, but I'm not doing it. But don't do what Mike does. Make sure you got yourself grounded or you're on an anti-static type of environment. There's virtually no dust in here at all. Again, because there's pretty much that's the only fan. The area that it was in isn't particularly dusty or dirty. It's a room we very rarely use, to be honest with you. So as you can see, there's very little dust, dirt or debris on here. So let's take this cooler off and see what the paste is actually like. This is quite an unusual mounting actually. Some of you have never had an AM1 system, have probably never seen this kind of mounting before. It's very unusual. Generally we always tend to have 4 mounting areas for coolers to distribute the weight evenly. So is that going to be stuck on there pretty solid? Might need a little wiggle to get it off. Oh yeah, that was on there quite well. So yeah, the paste has, it's still got a little bit of viscosity to it, but it has sort of started to harden up a little bit around the outside edges. So we'll clean that off. We'll clean off the CPU. Actually, before I do that, let's get a close up. So hopefully you can see that in the camera. So you see this, it's gone quite flaky on the edges, and it doesn't look like there was a great deal of paste on there actually to start with. Right, so let's get this this SoC cleaned up a little bit. Now we've got some rubbing alcohol here, so this will be very good for cleaning this up. It's always best to use an alcohol if you can, because it evaporates and doesn't leave any residue. And we just give that a buff off after. I wonder if I can get that in a good shot so you can actually see the chip there. Now you can actually see the writing on it. If you're wondering why I'm showing it in 2 areas, because I've got 2 cameras running, which you've probably worked out by now. Can we see that? Any visibility? Oh well, I'll try and get some B-roll. Actually, no, I probably won't, because I'll put it back in. But just to read off what this is, so it is a AMD Athlon 5300 series FS1B AD5350, and no, I can't see the rest. This was actually manufactured in 2012 by AMD, it says on there. Diffused in Germany, made in China. So there you go, for those of you that are interested. So this is from 2012, so actually this has aged pretty well. I'm not really sure of any other PCs or computers or components that I've used from around about that era which are still going strong. A lot of the kind of original Intel 1155 boards are generally have failed. There's lots of those CPUs around, but not many boards. They seem to be very expensive now. Whereas these things, even overclocked, which they have, even at their kind of default setting, 2 GHz, a lot of people, especially on these AM1 I-A boards have managed to get some pretty decent overclocks. Now I myself got this to about 2.5 gigahertz, so that's a pretty healthy overclock. It's not bad at all. And with some tweaking, people have been known to get them to 2.6, 2.7, which actually do make them quite nippy. So let's clean the other side off now. Yeah, that paste is on there pretty well, so that has actually probably lost its cooling ability, and I don't think it is Arctic cooling or MX4 or anything like that. I think this is just some kind of cheap generic paste. It's pretty well stuck on there. Again, whilst this is out, we could have gone on and sort of really gone to town and maybe lapped the cooler to make it completely flat, but realistically, even with this on, it was basically at ambient temperature anyway, so I don't think that's going to be particularly necessary. Like I say, it's only a 25 watt CPU, so it's going to be absolutely fine. So now what we need to do is put some paste on. So we're going to do this in the tried and tested way. So we're just going to put a little blob in the middle, and then we're going to walk away, and that'll do. So now what we've got to do is line up the CPU cooler with the two holes, because we haven't got the 4 holes that we had previously. So if we look through there, you can see 2 holes, so we're just going to line those up. Actually, it might be easier to do it that way. Is that going to be easier? No, possibly. Right, where's the fan header? I can't remember where the fan header was now. Might as well try and make life a little bit easier if at all possible. So the fan header's in that top corner. So yeah, that way around will be fine. Actually, this isn't a particularly easy way of doing this, he says. Surely there must be an easier way of doing this. I guess it's just a matter of getting one of the screws lined up, then grabbing the other one, sticking out through as well, and then we'll try and line those up. Yeah, not one of the better inventions of this century. Right, that's got that connected, so we'll take the weight off that. We just do the screws, a couple of turns. Right, so that's as tight as that wants to go. And we're all good. Let's give that fan a little blast, make sure. I'm pretty sure that was quite clean anyway. So we'll connect up the fan header. Now this is actually a bit of a blast on the past, so this fan actually doesn't have a 4-pin PWM, it has 3 pins, so that does go some way to show the kind of the age of this. So there's our fan back on, so we might as well stick the RAM back in as well. Now this actually has got the retention clips, which have become very popular now, where it just attaches, or it's only got one kind of movable arm on one side. So that's actually, back in the days they used to always have one on each end, so quite a new thing. Well, for this board anyway. Right, so that's our RAM sticks in. We'll give them a little wobble, make sure they're sitting firmly, but yeah, it's looking pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to give the bottom of the case a little bit of a wipe over with a slightly damp cloth. Just to get rid of any loose dust that's in there, but I think it's actually pretty clean anyway. And again, consider how long it's been in use without any real attention. Certainly that's the first time I've taken the motherboard out in at least, like I said, a couple of years, I think it must be now. Maybe it's not as long as that, maybe it's only a year, but even still, 12 months to it to still be pretty much pristine inside is not bad going. It looks pretty good. Pretty nice and clean. Okay, so let's get the I/O shield back in its proper place because that's popped out a little bit. And then we can put the motherboard back in. This is one of those things that it's actually quite nice to have a bit of a tinker around with one of these, because it's not really got a great deal of monetary value these days. So if something does go wrong, it's not the end of the world, which is quite a nice way to be. It does feel a little bit tight on there, so why is that? I did notice actually when I put it in that it seemed a little bit tight against that back plate, which is maybe why it didn't sit very nicely. Maybe those aren't bent up. Now if anyone's interested actually and you want to use one of these mini ITX cases, I will be putting some links in the video description so you can get one for yourself. There are a few around still. You can still pick them up here and there. So yeah, I said we will put links in there. I don't think you'll be able to pick up the motherboard and processor. Well, actually the processor you might be able to. So if we can find some links, we will put them in the description below. Although, I suppose that raises a question. Would I recommend you buying one of these new? Which, actually, to be honest with you, probably not. For the sake of, I think the retail price of the CPU, when they were available originally, was around about £50, in that sort of ballpark. And the motherboard itself would have been a similar price, £50, £60. But these days I think you can probably get yourself a much better option with like a Ryzen 3 2200 or maybe the 2200G and a mini ITX board or micro ATX board. I think we do tend to pay a lot more than we should do really for ITX. It's one of those form factors which it is very nice and it's very small, but it does seem to be extremely overpriced in my opinion. Okay, let me know what you think in the comments. So let's get these connectors put back in place. We'll do the front panel connector first of all, because that one is a pain. Okay, so we've got the front panel connector connected up. Now again, this is really telling of the era, 2012. Now we've still got the kind of the coloured cables. These are sheathed in just like a grey off the shelf. We're much more used to these days having everything kind of sleeved. Or braided or whatever, or at least color coded. So yeah, it's one of those things. It would be nice to have this kind of thing with maybe a Perspex top, but being we've got such a mismatch of color in there, and not to mention the Corsair Value RAM is just such a green PCB, and it's just so bland. So maybe in some ways it's better to have it all encased in this nice satin matte black so you can't see what's going on. Anyway, onward and upward. So we've got the USB header next, which is over this side, which is actually a pretty difficult place to get to. And that is one thing which actually doesn't change on these kinds of setups. The whole kind of complexity of the mini ITX. There is never really a good amount of room to work in. You're always kind of trying to squeeze things in here and there. So that's the power supply connected. It's so ridiculously easy. And there's the 4-pin power going in. So that is literally pretty much it, apart from connecting up the hard drive which goes in the top, but other than that we're pretty much all good. Now, I suppose we could rearrange some of these cables for the power on the back, but yeah, that is pretty much it. There isn't a great deal going on in there. It's a shame it doesn't have an M.2 slot on there or some kind of NVMe. That would be fantastic to remove all this clutter, but still, it's so compact. I love it. Now I've got to try and remember which way around this went now. So that one in there. So that is actually one of the downsides of this design with the hard drives on the top in this, or SSDs rather, in this configuration, is that the, as you can see, the top of the cooler is kind of obstructed. There is actually a pretty good air gap in between there, so there's probably about an inch gap between the actual SSD and the cooler. But again, you do have to be a little bit mindful of the wiring where it goes, just in case it gets stuck in there. So I'm going to route that around slightly, just so that if it does get moved around for any reason, that the wires don't go anywhere near the fans. Because although this is a low CPU, low TDP CPU, APU, SoC, whatever you want to call it, doesn't use a lot of energy, essentially is what I'm trying to say. So the cooling isn't imperative. I do know of people that have used these in passive cooling mode, perhaps not with the slight overclock, but no reason why they shouldn't do it. So we'll attach that by letting the tape stick on there again, and all we've got to do now is put the lid on and screw it down. And what I'm going to do is actually, previously when I was running this, it was the idle temperature was around about 28-29 degrees thereabouts, after Windows had booted up and had gone into Windows, and it's just like on its merry way doing Steam updates and that kind of thing. So I'm going to fire it back up now with the new paste on there, and just make sure that all the temperatures are okay, and see how it's doing, see if we actually managed to reduce it. I would imagine now, because we've taken the CPU off, or SoC off, and replace everything, when it boots up first of all, it's going to be pretty low anyway. I would imagine it's going to be in the 20s anyway, but we'll fire it up and we'll see how it is, and then we'll have a little bit of Rocket League. So there we go, we'll treat the box to a little bit of a clean up on the outside. We've done the inside, so we might as well do the full job. Now this is actually a universal screen cleaner. This actually, I found it to be really good for TFTs, LCDs, all that kind of stuff. But it actually does a pretty good job of cleaning up the outside of PCs as well, and it doesn't leave much residue, if any. So if you want to clean your PC, there's certainly a lot worse you could do. Anyway, there we go. So we're into Windows, and still so whisper quiet. So let's have a look. We're going to GPU Z, and you can just about see, hopefully you'll just be about to see the CPU. So core speed on the CPU is 2456.57 megahertz, which is up from its standard 2 gigahertz, which you may or may not be able to see on that camera. Also the memory currently is slightly overclocked, so it's DDR 667 or 666, which normally is, because it's double data rate, is 13333. Currently at the moment it's running at 779, so 780, give or take a few. So that's a reasonably healthy overclock. I could probably push it a little bit further, but this seems to be its kind of happy medium where it doesn't have any crashes and just does what it's meant to do. Graphics on this, actually, for those of you that are interested, this is the Radeon HD 8400 series, or the R3. Again, it's not going to set the world on fire at all. It's not particularly good, but for most tasks, for Windows, with a little bit of Rocket League, watching movies, which essentially what this is going to be for. It's super quiet. You can just leave it on. You can listen to music, listen to movies, watch Mike's unboxing videos if you want to. And you can do it in complete silence. You don't have to worry about PC fan noise, all that kind of stuff. Unlike that thing behind me with, what, 7-8 fans in there. I can hear it, it's just driving me mad, which I'm going to have to look at those fans in more depth. But anyway, that's that. We've already opened that. So let's have a look and see what our temperatures are like. This will be the interesting one. Now again, hardware monitor and CPU Z, if you want to use either of those, I'll put links to those in the video description as well. They're really useful for keeping an eye on temperatures and just finding out what's going on in your system. So if you are not sure what you've got in your computer and you want to find out more, then CPU ID and the CPU Z and hardware monitor are actually really useful. So at the moment, our AMD K16 processor is currently, the package temperature at the moment is 17 degrees. The minimum was 16 degrees and the maximum was 20 degrees, so it has actually spiked a little bit and then settled back down. Our fan, CPU fan at the moment, is currently at just under 500 RPM, and again it's still whisper quiet. The actual main board itself is running about 35 degrees, so again it's a really quiet and cool running little unit. So ideal in areas where you don't have a lot of airflow, maybe behind a TV, under a desk, in some kind of cabinet, all that kind of stuff. But I really love it. I really wish it was a more powerful beast. But obviously with more power comes more heat, so you can't have it all. But this little thing is it's going to be sorely missed actually. It does fit into the living room really nicely, and it just works. You just press a button on the front, it turns on in no time at all, and you can get on and start watching your movies and all that kind of stuff. So I suppose just for all time's sake, we'll fire up a little bit of Rocket League, and I'll leave you with some gameplay.